President Trump has expressed renewed optimism about reaching a deal to end the war in Gaza as he prepares for talks with Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. In a post on Truth Social, President Trump said there is a real chance for greatness in the Middle East, hinting at something special. He also claimed to have received what he called a very good response from Israeli Arab leaders, adding that they had already backed the blueprint. Hamas, however, dismissed the plan, calling it a distraction from what it described as the massacre happening inside Gaza, and said it had not received any new ceasefire proposal. Prime Minister Netanyahu confirmed the deal is not yet finalized. Speaking on Fox News, he praised President Trump, saying, "President Trump does what he does because he decides what is in America's best interest. I've often said, I don't decide anything for President Trump. He is the most independent and remarkable leader I have seen in all my years." That was Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking on Fox News. Now let's take you to Jerusalem and join our Middle East correspondent, Nell, who is there for us. Do we know any details about what is in the proposal at the moment? Well, nothing has been officially announced. But some journalists claim to have seen at least a draft version of the plan, a 21-point document. According to those reports, the Israeli military offensive would stop immediately once an agreement is reached. Within 48 hours, all of the remaining hostages, there are 48 in total, 20 of whom are still believed to be alive, would be released. The remains of the others would also be returned. As part of the plan, all Hamas weapons would be destroyed. This is something Hamas has previously rejected unless an independent Palestinian state is created. The proposal also says that Hamas fighters who commit to what is described as peaceful coexistence would be allowed to stay. Others would be permitted to leave if they choose, but no fighters would be forcibly expelled. This marks a major departure from what President Trump proposed earlier this year, back in February, when he floated the idea of building coastal resort in Gaza and a U.S. takeover, with Palestinians leaving the area entirely. Around 2 million Palestinians are expected to be affected. And in the proposal, there is supposed to be a Trump economic plan to rebuild and energize Gaza, along with an interim governance system. This would involve an overarching international body, with the U.S. helping to set it up, and a Palestinian technocratic committee playing a key role. According to reports, a reformed version of the Palestinian Authority, which currently governs parts of the West Bank, would also have a future role. In addition, there would be a temporary international stabilization force with contributions from Arab countries. But as of now, this remains only a framework. Much of the detail is still to be finalized. We know there have been important meetings between the Israeli Prime Minister and senior members of the White House team ahead of the big meeting at the White House. And when President Trump says he has received a good response from Arab leaders, is he referring to Egyptian and Qatari mediators? Has there been any word from those parties? Well, generally, there were positive signals after President Trump's meeting last Tuesday on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. He described it as his most important meeting of the day. During that meeting, he presented his 21-point plan, and it's understood that those Arab leaders also made some contributions. Reports suggest they pressed for a greater role for Palestinians in the transitional governing body, while Qatar in particular has asked for specific involvement in the framework. The proposal also reportedly includes a stipulation that Israel will not attack Qatar again, as it did earlier this month during what it said was an attempt to target Hamas leaders, an assassination attempt that ultimately failed. Qatar, of course, has been directly involved in drawing up this plan. It's still not clear what the final version will look like, but it is being seen as a very positive step. In fact, a joint news conference has already been scheduled between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump, following their private talks, something that likely would not be happening unless they were confident of having an announcement to make. Okay, stay with us for a moment, because we can also bring in our Gaza correspondent, Rishi, who joins us now from Istanbul. Rishi, first of all, what has the response from Hamas been, and can you put their current position into context for us? Are they still a meaningful force? On the ground, Hamas has suffered a great deal of damage over the past 2 years, particularly in the southern areas of Gaza, Khan Younis and Rafah. They are still believed to have as many as 5,000 fighters inside Gaza. Hamas insists it remains ready to fight Israeli forces and defend the cities. Despite the setbacks, the movement is still led by its committee. When I spoke to some of them yesterday about President Trump's new proposal, they said they have not received any official plan from the mediators, meaning the Qataris and Egyptians. We understand that an Egyptian security delegation is traveling to Doha today, where they are expected to join Qatari officials and Hamas representatives for meetings tonight to discuss the proposal further. Well, we'll have to wait and see what comes out of that meeting at the White House. We'll be following developments closely from Washington, where a press conference and statement are expected soon. Rishi, do stay with us because we want to turn now to what's happening in the occupied West Bank. Gaza is not the only Palestinian territory coming under an increasing attack. The threat of annexation from Israel remains. Violence by extremist Jewish settlers in the West Bank has risen sharply since October 7, 2023. The UN's Humanitarian Office, OCHA, estimates there are on average 4 settler attacks every day. At the same time, settlement expansion in the occupied territories has accelerated, and Israel has drastically restricted Palestinian movement in the West Bank through both permanent and temporary checkpoints. According to the UN, 995 Palestinians have been killed by Israelis in the West Bank since October 2023. Of those, 180 Palestinians, including at least 30 children, were killed just since the beginning of this year. Let's show you the area we're talking about. The West Bank lies on the western side of the Jordan River and is the larger of the 2 Palestinian territories, the other being the Gaza Strip. Together, they make up what is recognized by 156 countries, including the UK, as the State of Palestine. The West Bank is bordered by Jordan and by Israel. In its latest restrictions, Israel has closed the only crossing between the West Bank and neighboring Jordan. That closure prevents more than 2 million Palestinians from leaving. The plan presented by President Trump to Arab and Muslim leaders reportedly includes a promise that Israel will not annex the occupied West Bank, a major concern in the region. Can you give us a sense of what daily life is like for Palestinians living in the West Bank? Well, it does vary, but Palestinians in the West Bank have experienced much higher tensions in recent years. Many feel their problems have been ignored while global attention has focused on Gaza. Economically, the Palestinian Authority governs most Palestinian towns and cities in the West Bank. And in the Oslo Accords, Israel is supposed to transfer tax revenues it collects on behalf of the authority since it controls the borders. But Israel has been withholding those funds, citing payments the authority makes to prisoners in Israeli jails and to families of those who carried out attacks against Israelis. The Palestinian Authority, under growing pressure, says it has reformed that system since the start of the year, providing proof that its welfare system has changed. Yet, Israel continues to withhold large sums of money, funds the authority depends on to pay salaries and provide basic services.